Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the People Over Perks podcast by Leapsome, where each episode we speak with an HR or people operations leader about how they're building a high-performance culture within their company. In today's episode, I speak with Daniela Kurrer, the Chief People Officer from HeyJobs. I talk to Daniela about how she's supported HeyJobs as they have scaled over the last 4 years, how she's building a feedback culture within the organisation, and how they're supporting their employees with mental health and a whole lot more. Enjoy the conversation. Okay, Daniela, thank you for joining us today on the People Over Perks podcast.
Nice. Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Great. And so Daniela, you are the Chief People Officer at HeyJobs. Tell us about HeyJobs. What is HeyJobs as a company?
So HeyJobs was founded in 2016, and our vision is to enable everyone to find the right job to live a fulfilling life. So what we basically do is our aim is to connect talent acquisition professionals, recruiters with talent in the marketplace. And I think as a talent acquisition manager or recruiter, you know the pain point of finding the right talent and really being able to reach that talent that you want to join your company. And we support recruiters in a very automated way to find the right talent for all their open job role positions, and also help talent for them to have more visibility on which companies they apply to, what's out there for them, and have it really easy to apply to these positions.
Okay, excellent. And how would you describe your role there then as the Chief People Officer?
So I would describe my role to really being at the center of building this company, and really caring for making sure that we have a very safe, very productive, very pleasant work environment for everyone, and just creating a workspace where everybody really can be themselves and contribute to the teams and just be successful in their jobs.
Okay, excellent. And how big is the company in total right now?
So we're at 120 people at the moment.
Okay, 120 people. And tell us a bit about your team specifically then. So how big is your team that you manage, and how is that structured?
So we are 7 people in the team, and I think we work really closely with each other. So we really align so we can create one very consistent and very pleasant employee experience for everyone who's joining HeyJobs, but also who's developing at HeyJobs. And we do have very set team roles. So we have 3 people caring for the talent acquisition part, and then we have 1 person who's really focusing on the people operations and building the structure, and 1 person for the office and who's caring for all the team events. And then we have a person who does very specialized part of the learning and development. And I think we have very specialized roles, but make sure that we are working very consistently as a team together.
Okay, great. And do all of those people report directly into you, or are there certain tiers?
They're set in tiers. So at the moment, we have a fantastic head of recruiting who is caring for that side and who reports into me. And we have 2 recruiters who will report to him and just go about the daily business. And then I have currently 3 people reporting into me who are caring more for the employee engagement, the operations side.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. And then who do you report to as the Chief People Officer?
I report to Marius, who's one of the founders, but also the CEO of the company.
I see. Okay. And has that always been the case, that you've always reported into the founder?
It has actually. I think both founders are called Mariuses. So I think both of them built the company with a very people-centric outlook. So I think people was always at the core of the company, building the company. And I think it was always quite natural that they had a very direct connection to the people function. And I think it's always been like this. And I think it's, for me, a real luxury to really be so close reporting to him and discussing it with him, because I don't think in every company people has that kind of standing and that kind of focus for a CEO. And I think we are, as a company, are very lucky.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Always great to hear when the founders are so tightly connected to the company culture, and that's always a focus for them. And so I wanted to ask you about your own career progression at HeyJobs, because you've been with the company for 4 years now. Is that correct?
Yes. So I joined in January 2017, which is basically round about the time that the company had a product market fit and was really finding into its own of what we're doing today and growing. And yeah, I joined. I think my job title when I joined was feel good manager. And executive assistant, and it ended up just being wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of things. I was originally doing a lot of the business operations, which HR was always a part of, but it also had finance in it. And I think as scaling a company is not a very straight path, so was my career development. I think there was a lot of off topics coming to me, things that I gave up, things that I gained, and I think it's been like a very, very much a roller coaster developing into this function. But I think this is part of the adventure of being part of scaling a company, that it's not a very straight career path, but you're just trying yourself out and what you want to do and what you're good at as much as the company grows with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so your previous job title up until very recently was VP of People.
Yes, it was.
And so now, as the Chief People Officer, how would you describe the main differences between those two roles? Has your scope and level of responsibility changed as such?
I think with titles and levels, I think every company has a very specific setup and system and what they mean internally. For me, because there was no chief people officer when I was VP, I think for me it didn't change as much the input that I had. Like, I think I had for the last couple of years, I already had a seat at the table to speak when we were discussing people topics, how we will grow the company from a people perspective. So I think in that sense, it hasn't really changed the scope so much. I think the work, as you grow through the difference level that we have at HeyJobs, the work becomes a little bit more strategically. So I think you're more moving from very operational topics in the beginning to making plans for the next year, for the next 5 years. So I think this has become a little bit more of a focus for me moving into this role. But I think as a VP, being the lead of the people function already, it hasn't really changed that much. I liked it personally because I think from a perspective of how diverse the leadership team is, I think it is nice to do it as a signaling to the company as well that this is possible for everyone, and this is a very natural career progression that's also possible for everyone.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. And so also, within your role now, what are the main metrics that you're looking at? What are the things that you are really measuring to know that you're being successful in your role?
So to be quite frank, coming from a little bit of a finance background, I think I do really enjoy Excel and metrics.
Okay, that's always helps.
I think following them up is and also what are you measuring and what's meaningful to you is very different for different companies. The two metrics that we track very consistently and very regularly is partly the recruiting side, which is hires made, hires signed. I'm looking into the conversion rates for me, how the hiring process is running, just to do a lot more predictable resource planning and trying to anticipate where you're going to have bottlenecks, where do you need to adapt roadmaps. So I think this is a metrics that is very important for you to see what are the capacities of the company in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months. And the second one is actually the team happiness, which is how we call the engagement survey that we do quarterly. And I think it is a real regular sense of the pulse of the company and how people feel and what areas we need to get better at or what areas we're already really good at. So this is the two metrics that I very closely monitor.
I see. Okay. And within that engagement survey, what does that look like then? How many questions does it consist of? Does that go to everyone in the company? To talk us through that process.
Yeah, so it's currently a very manual survey. It's an Excel sheet. It consists of I think 36 questions, so it's quite thorough, and it goes to everyone in the company. So it doesn't matter if it's a working student or a team lead or a C-level. It literally goes to everyone, and we try to also find some parameters. So we try to see if there's any differences if people just joined the company or if they've been with the company for a year. And it's concerned with like a whole scope of questions relating to like personal resilience, like how do you feel currently, but also how do you assess the team relationships? Do you feel you can learn in the company? Is there anything you would like us? There's also open questioning. Is there anything you would like us to improve? What could improve your happiness? It's a bunch of questions about like how do you regard the relationship with your leadership, with your team lead? Do you feel HeyJobs is a good organization to work for? So it's very thorough, and I think it takes a lot of invest from the people, but also from us. But I think the quality and breadth of data is really good to have for us as the people team to work on.
Yeah. And is the survey entirely anonymous?
It's entirely anonymous. So what we do, we try to do it by team. Mm-hmm. But obviously not all teams have enough team members to really make sure that this is anonymous. So we do group teams into bigger teams, and we always allow for a minimum of 4 people in one team to make sure that it's anonymous. There is questions if you, and I think this is a question that is right. Like if you wanted to do it because of the parameters, like how long people have been in the company, where are they working, you could probably find it out. I mean, this is the reality of a company that's not 10,000 people. But I don't really know why this is of concern. Like, I want people to be honest. I want to know what people are thinking. And for me, this is feedback that I'm really grateful for. So I think this is a culture we also have at HeyJobs, where we don't only have this type of survey, but we have a bunch of very regular opportunities to give feedback. And I think this, for us as a company, is something we want to have open discussions and have really honest and direct feedback culture. So I don't care who said what. I just want to know, what are the big things we need to do? What do we need to look out to? Are we creating a good work environment for everyone?
Yeah, excellent. And with 36 questions, obviously that's a lot of data that you then create. How do you then, sit down and go through that data, and who is then part of that process of, reading through all those questions, going through the doing the analysis, and then taking that through to building an action plan? And how does that work within HeyJobs?
Yeah, so we as a people team will analyze the data, and we usually will analyze it by area. So there will be an engineering part, like the product owners, what does the revenue organization think? And we will share this with the C-level that's responsible for this area. So very high level, we will share this information, and we will also share the combination of teams that area includes. And the C-level will share it with their direct reports. So this will be part of a conversation in the follow-up time, that they have a conversation about, okay, hey, for our specific area, what can we do? Is there anything maybe in the tech stack we need to improve the way we do sprint meetings? Is there something we can change in the way we sell? Is there something, do people need more training in certain areas? So I think for the very team specific areas, the C-level will actually own that process. And then obviously we will also look at things that are a little bit more general and more people related, like, hey, can we have more plants in the office? I mean, it's an easy win. Of course you can. I'm super happy. And I think for these very specific topics, we will take them as a people team and see what we can do, how we can improve on certain elements that we can directly influence.
I see. Okay. And I wanted to come back to something that you mentioned a minute ago about how a feedback culture is super important to you. What does that mean in the context of HeyJobs?
So in the context of HeyJobs, I think it's very much something that we base on our values. So we have 3 values, which is teamwork, drive, entrepreneurship. And I think we make it very explicit that teamwork for us means that we want to collaborate, but also part of this is that we really directly want to communicate and give feedback and receive feedback. And we're trying to put this into practice by having a lot of regular check-ins. So I think there is a very much a dual fix or one-on-one culture. So there's weekly or bi-weekly check-ins that team members have with their team leads. And then every 6 months, we also have a feedback day where we take the company out of their daily routines and their daily operations. And it's a whole day where we do company retrospective with the whole company on different areas. The teams will give upward feedback to their team leads. And also we will have a whole afternoon of peer-to-peer feedback where people can just feedback with people they work with closely, but maybe not in the same team. So this is something that we have as part of the annual and very regular HR initiatives that we do.
Okay, excellent. That makes sense. And then also, I wanted to ask about performance reviews.
Yes.
How do they work within HeyJobs?
So of course, this is also part of feedback. This is a different stream. So we do a performance review every 6 months. So we also have a spring cycle and an autumn cycle, and we are doing this tool-based, so we're using Leapsome for this. Yes, and our performance reviews are facilitated via the tool, and we always review on the impact as well as the values. So I think this also iterates that we believe it doesn't only matter what we achieve, but also how we achieve this. And so we're doing this every 6 months. It includes a direct feedback from team lead to team member and team member to team lead, but also it includes further information from peers that the team member is working with.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that detail. And then within your team, what are the other processes that you own, or what are the big strategic initiatives that your team have implemented recently?
I think recently has been a bit of a crazy year, obviously. I think generally what we do care for is, I think next to the feedback in the performance management area, I think we do have one stream which is very much culture-based, which is the team events. We have usually 4 company events a year, and then we have a budget for individual team events. And I think all this is facilitated and also encouraged through the people team. We also have the people operations part where it's just scaling the company and making sure that how the company works, are the processes still working, reviewing these processes. So I think this is also a very important part. And then you also have the talent acquisition side, which is also planning ahead how you're going to fill positions that come up in teams when you're extending teams. So I think there's a lot of streams in HR that you are trying to hold together in one team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there that you have a dedicated budget for team events.
Yes.
And so I wanted to ask, like, as in your role as Chief People Officer, do you have a dedicated budget for HR? And can you talk us through how that budget is set, and how that budget is allocated, without giving away too many confidential specifics?
So I can't tell you how much it is, but
No.
yes, I have a budget. We every October and November we doing the budget process for the next year. So the way it works is the budget really has two components. I think the one component is what we call a maintenance budget. So this is budget that I need to keep the company at the structure and the levels that it is. So that would include company events that we do every year. That would include setups that we have. That would include employee celebrations. So based on, and it's very much related to headcount most of the time, or number of new hires or new joiners. So this is the budget I will do based on what are we planning, how are we planning to grow the headcount. And this is basically just keeping the company at the level that it's now. And then there's a second part, and this is basically the investment cases that I make. So if I have any specific plans for next year, or also something that I believe we will need to implement as the company grows, then I make an investment case and I write down what I want and why I want it and how much it will cost. And I think then with every budget, then you have all the different areas having their investment cases. And I think then it's just a conversation to be had. It's what do we need? The company needs more to invest in. What do we think has the most impact? And on this basis, we decide what kind of investment cases and how many investment cases we want to have in the people.
I see. Okay. And so, as you mentioned, you're now about 120 people, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the big things that you're excited about looking forward? What are some of the topics that you've got your eye on for 2021?
Okay. Moving forward, I think I'm always excited about growing the company. I think it's always challenging, and I think it's just the reality that when you grow a company, you will also face challenges that you didn't know you had. I think it's just a very natural process that what the company needs and what the team needs will change with a different headcount, a different size. Maybe you're moving into separate offices. So I think for me next year, I think it's a bit of an off year next year because it's so unpredictable and it's not really plannable. I think at this point, we would like to go a little bit more into training and development. I think we're doing a lot of initiatives individually, but I think the more the company grows, you lose this implicit knowledge people have just by knowing everyone and talking to everyone. And I think making this a little bit more implicit and a little bit more formalized and train people. I think this is something I have kind of at the back of my mind at the moment, but I think just finding a new normal and making sure that everyone in the company is doing well and the company is doing well during that pandemic is probably number one.
Yeah, I can imagine. And on the topic of training and development, are there certain programs that you have in place already today across the company?
Yes, so we have a very, very structured onboarding for all employees. So there is a lot of trainings and intros these employees get just to get very familiar with a lot of teams across the company, but also the culture and how we operate, and just like get a feel for the company and get a lot of knowledge about the market HeyJobs operates in, the product, how we do things at HeyJobs. So I think this is a very formal training for all the new joiners that we have. And we also have a graduate program at HeyJobs, which is for young professionals that want to join HeyJobs and just gain a lot more experience in the sales function. And it's a very structured 2-year program that also has a 2-year training arc. So at different points, they will get different trainings from either external coaches or internal coaches. It's a lot of sales training, but I think especially for young professionals, it's also a lot of internal training on how to communicate, a little bit on self-awareness. How do you get to know yourself better, and how do you get to know how you function and operate in an organization? So I think we already have very special, like very, very good training programs in place. But I think the more a company grows, I think this is always something you can improve on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear that you already have those graduate programs in place. How many people do you bring on in each cohort as such?
Yeah, so we start at beginning of each quarter, and we're adding about like 12 people into the program. I think that's, for them, it's a nice number to have as a group. And obviously, I think you always remember the people you start with and the people you've been in the first onboardings with. And I think for them to experience this as a group is really nice. So we have 12 people joining each quarter, and they will go through the program together. They will be in different teams, which is nice because they will get to know, like, they will not just be that one group of young professionals, but they'll be really like connecting with a lot of people within the company. But they will go through the trainings together and just have that experience as a group of them. And I think that's really, really nice to have. And I think it's very hands-on experience, but it's also a lot of input and a lot of training and learning they can have in these 2 years.
Yeah, excellent. That's a really exciting way to get an introduction to both the company and the industry. Very cool. And of course, you mentioned how this year has been rather unpredictable, let's say.
Yes.
For you as a people function, can you talk us through some of the challenges that you've had to face and some of the changes that you've made as a result of the pandemic?
Yes. So I think it has been very ad hoc. I think there was, I remember talking to the team in June, and we all thought the year was already over. Like it felt like an eternity. I think it was for everyone, it was a very stressful time. I just don't think it's just the people teams affected. But for us, because we were a very office-based company, and I think this is also how we build the culture and how, as a people team, we manage the culture. I think we created a lot of space and opportunity in the office for very unintentional conversation, unintentional bonding, where people just meet, or people do a team event after work together, or people have the opportunity to mingle in collaborative areas. So I think when you build a company that's so much based on the space you're all working in, then moving to a very fully remote setup, I think, was for sure the main challenge. And I think the main challenge is that you try to create this unintentional meeting and conversation and bonding space in a remote environment, which means you need to make it a lot more intentional. And I think we are still learning, and I think the whole internet has been learning how to do that. And I think it's just a process for all of us. But I think the team's been great, and they've really engaged. And I'm really happy how we got to December, nearly December.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you foresee yourselves going back to the office in exactly the way that you were set up before, or do you think that there will be lasting changes that will come as a result of this?
Yeah, so I think we looked into it, how we would want to set up the work mode long term for the first time in September. And I think there's a lot of learnings you can have from that experience moving everyone fully remote, because I think before that, everyone has a personal opinion to home office. People like it, people don't like it, but not everyone has an experience with it. And I think now for the first time you could have that conversation and everyone experienced it, and everyone had their own experience with it. And I think we found that it was very different, the effect it had on different teams. And I think we found that for certain teams it worked incredibly well, which was a sign like where we couldn't really see that it affected people. And I think there are certain teams who really wanted to go back to the office and who really missed it. And I think it really differs. I think it differs maybe on your personal circumstances, like how are you living on your own and you really feel the isolation, or do you have a family and you feel it's too busy? And I think it's very depending, but I think we found that we will not go back 100% to that office-based setup, but we actually looked into making it more of a hybrid, like some office days, some on-site days. And I think we're still in the process of figuring it out long term. But we've been looking into different work modes for different areas and how they can work together.
Yes, yeah. And has there been anything that you have found has worked particularly well for you during this time?
Remote work, or
to make remote working more efficient for everybody.
I hope so. I hope, like, we try to get everyone a really good setup. So we made sure that we could have desks and chairs and screens and just I think the IT setup we did really well. And then I think we did a lot of initiatives to really support people in that area, because I think it's not just about, and I think we shouldn't forget, it's not just about a changing work mode for people. It's also living in a global pandemic and how it affects everybody's life. So like people can't travel anymore, people can't visit families anymore. And I think we did a lot of initiative on that part as well, just supporting people and mental health and bringing this issue to more visibility, because I think this is one part during the pandemic that I think needed a lot of focus for the team. And I hope we're doing a good job, but this is a little bit the crux with remote. It's not as easy to get a feel for people and get a check-in. Like, I think you need to really call people, make coffee meets. But I think the team's done really well. And so far I hope we're doing a good job in supporting everyone in that new setup.
Yeah, and on the topic of mental health, are there any initiatives that you have done specifically on that area?
Yeah, so I think mental health for me is a bit of a very core to my heart. I think it's one of the topics that still has a very, very high stigma in a working context. So this is something I really pushed. So we started a cooperation with Mila Health, which is an online platform that they offer a couple of online courses for stress reduction. But what I think is really like one of their USPs is they offer a range of people you can talk to. So they have professionals, they have business coaches, therapists in the back of their team you can talk to. So this is something we offered to the team to use and really make use of that, because I think as an employer, you cannot expect people to freely share everything about their private lives, even though it might affect their work. And I think this gives them a platform to be very free about sharing and getting the support they need. And we also did a lot of health and just movement challenges. So we had a health challenge where we just gave little tasks to people like, hey, walk 10,000 steps. And we implemented a few more Zoom classes. So we have a meditation class, and I think a couple of weeks ago was mental health awareness day worldwide. I'm really bad with those days, but we actually have a mental health week at the moment where we do like a daily meditation with an external coach. So I think we gave that a lot of visibility, and I hope that it really helps people to stay sane.
Yeah, that's really great that you offer these opportunities to employees when needed. That's excellent. Great. And so I wanted to jump back to the career topic for HR professionals.
Yes.
If you were mentoring somebody just starting out their career in HR, what would your advice to them be today?
So I honestly, I sometimes don't really feel qualified saying this because I did not have a very straightforward CV, and I have not had that specific career path in my mind for myself. I think I always knew I wanted to work with people, and what I did should have had like people at their core. And I think I honestly think what helped me most as an HR professional is doing a lot of work on myself and becoming aware of how I work and how I interact, because I think this is the basis of understanding how humans connect and humans respond. And I think this is something, I think if you're enjoying HR, something that would always help in creating relationships with people and really getting to be able to help them is the better you understand yourself. So I think this is something that I found very useful for myself, and just really enjoy working with people, because I think there is a lot of ways into HR, and I think everybody has their own preferences. So, for example, at the very a very long time ago, but I trained in payroll, and I absolutely loved it. And a lot of people don't like it, and I think it doesn't really matter what you specialize on to go through a certain career path, but I think that you really want to work for people and for a team and really make better how these people connect and communicate. And I think this is just what I would tell people.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And so, so you said that you've had perhaps a non-traditional career path into this route, and you mentioned the training about payroll, which is obviously one aspect. But has there been any other particular like trainings or career development topics that you've embarked on that have been really impactful for your own career?
I think the hardest transition you make, or I don't know if it applies to everyone, but I also see it now at HeyJobs and the team. I think one of the most significant transitions you will make is when you move from an individual contributor to a team lead. Mm-hmm. I think that transition is very substantial, and I think people find it really hard to rearrange priorities and how to structure themselves. And I think it's kind of like people think they still need to do everything by themselves, and they also need to manage a team, while the challenge is how can you get things done with and through a team. And I think any trainings I had at that transition point when it came to leadership and prioritizing and how to motivate people and how to really manage my time as my most valuable resource, I think this is the trainings that have been very fundamental to me. And I think this is also something I always try to give back and give to new leaders, because I think this is a transition that's very substantial, and I think it really affects a lot of how well you deal with this transition, how well you set up for moving further.
I see. Yeah, and obviously that applies to anybody in their career, not just to people in the HR function.
Yeah, of course. I think it's I think it's but I also think that it's the challenges you have are not always very specific to the job you do. I think we all go through super similar challenges, and what we learn and what's the next building block is. So
Yeah, excellent. And so, in your role today, then, where do you go for your resources, your inspiration, your learning to make sure that your skill sets are at the forefront of the industry?
I think it's interesting. I think with people, I think what one of your most learnings is being really aware of what's going on around you. So I think it's educating. I think people in your team and in your companies are always mirroring what's going on in society, and I think everybody is not only affected by work but also by society. So I think I try to keep up a lot by reading what's going on. I read a lot of Medium articles, and I just talk to people. And I think I think just being really open to learn, and also let yourself be educated about things you might not know a lot about, is something that helps you to understand people and how to bring people together. So I think this is just a lot of looking what's going on in the world.
Yeah, that sounds good. And are there any books that you have read in your career that you found particularly impactful?
I think I read The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, which is so old, and I read it miles ago, but I thought it was really, really interesting when it came to human connectivity and interaction.
Okay.
And I also read Emotional Intelligence, which is also a super old book, but I think it's still incredibly relevant. And I think it was one of the first books I read that really concerned with like the psychological part of leadership, of dealing with humans, dealing with people. And I really enjoyed it, and I still think it has a lot of relevant applications today.
Okay, excellent. So they're the books that you would recommend our listeners to check out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And so a couple of final questions. How do you see HR evolving as a function? Are there aspects of the role that you think have really shifted over recent years, and where do you see that heading in the future?
Yeah, I think the main shift that has been happening, to be honest, is the one of definition. So I think HR was very much, for a very long time, concerned with the resource, with one single resource in the company. And I think a lot of times nowadays it's moving to people and people teams and people manager. And I actually think this is one of the developments that has been really important, to acknowledge that people are not, I mean, as much as they are a resource, they're not one resource. They're the core of your company, and they're the core of how you achieve things as a company. And I think this mindset shift has been really significant, and I think it opened up a lot of initiatives and developments after that. So how do you see people not only as employees but as a whole? How you deal with people, how you develop people. So I think this mindset change has been really good for the people function.
Okay, that's good to hear. And then lastly, obviously, there are always many challenges that we all face in our jobs, and maybe this isn't specific to your job, but is there an HR challenge as a whole that you wish could be solved?
An HR challenge?
Yeah, so something that that perhaps if you could wave a magic wand and that would be really impactful, something that you would help to fix.
Interesting. I think if I could get everyone to talk more with each other and communicate more and listen more, I think that would literally solve a lot of HR problems.
Yeah. I think that's very, very valid, and yeah, that's something that sounds very easy, but I can totally imagine is a big challenge for you.
Yeah, I to be honest, I think it's interesting how little we listen and how little we communicate, considering it's sometimes the easiest and shortest measure we can have. And I think this is something I always try to encourage. And I think a lot of work you do as a people team is getting people to mediate, to talk to each other, to understand each other better, to understand themselves. So I think it's such a, as you said, I think it's such a simple measure that people don't do enough.
Yeah. And so just to dig into that, you mentioned that obviously people have their one-on-ones at HeyJobs. Are there any other like initiatives that you try and help facilitate to enable people to have these conversations?
Yeah, so I think what we do is we ask for a lot of feedback. So I think this is just really asking people, hey, what did you think about this? What did you think about this? I think this is something that's really important. We also do a lot of work to strengthen the team dynamics and the team bonding with the team lead, but also across the team. So I think this is something that you really need to facilitate, to give people these platforms. And and I think especially now recreating these unintentional meetings and the unintentional conversations that people have with lots of tools and lots of try and error. But I think this is something we are trying to recreate remotely as well, that people just get to chance meet and have a conversation with each other.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Great. Well, Daniela, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of People Over Perks by Leapsome. We're available on the Leapsome YouTube channel and all major podcasting platforms, so you can hit subscribe to receive each episode as it's released. We also have an email newsletter and a Slack community where you'll find great resources and discussions on how to build a high-performing, humane and diverse company culture. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can head to the resources section at leapsome.com. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.